And it felt like the scriptures had sent me these people, these heroes, to carry me through this really, really hard time.
You know, taking care of him and that time was completely and utterly overwhelming and the greatest privilege of my life. And I wish I were doing it now.
They learn how to think about others. They learn how to see others through the eyes of the Savior.
Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here at the LDS Motion Picture Studio in Provo, Utah. And joining me today is Adam Sidwell. Adam, welcome.
Brian, very nice to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, thanks for taking some time. You've done some amazing things. First, founder and head of studio at Future House Studios, a Metaverse creation. You'll have to tell me what all that means, but you work in animation, game development, AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, all kinds of reality, right? Sounds fun. Also
Real
Future
reality.
House. Yeah, Future House Publishing, which there's the Ever Tasty series and probably some other things that you can tell us about that you've been doing.
All sorts
well.
of things, yep.
Yeah. I want to talk about, to start off though, just to help out, pad your resume a little bit. Some of those low budget films that you worked on, like I Am Legend, I, Robot, King Kong, Tron, Pirates of the Caribbean, just a few of those that people probably have seen your work, but don't know that you've been part of that. So we want to make sure they know about that. But let's talk a little bit of your background. I think you grew up in California, right? Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
What was your interest? Do you have an interest in this? Were you a gamer going up at
Well, I had the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah.
All full 8-bit, Super Mario, Contra, Castlevania, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, all those good, Mega Man. Mega Man's a good one. So we played all those, but it was side scrollers, and it wasn't until there was a moment when I saw, I think it was Castle Wolfenstein, which is a 3D, one of the first 3D games out there, and one of my friends was playing it in high school, and I thought, what is this? And that was kind of opening up the world of 3D before there was 3D. So gamers, I was a casual gamer, and we didn't have all the different gaming options that went so deep at the time. But what I was really into was storytelling and film, and not in the way of like, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker. I just liked making stuff. I liked sculpting, drawing, making experiences for people. And so storytelling, and I didn't have that word for it at the time. I just knew I liked expressing ideas.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a place called Modesto, California, which is actually where George Lucas is from.
Oh, yeah.
So, I was really into Star Wars. And I think probably, a lot of the viewers are also into Star Wars and like Star Wars. And
Absolutely.
When I found out that George Lucas created Star Wars and he was from my town, I was like, whoa, that's cool. I lived just down the street from where he lived. Maybe I could make something cool someday. And I started, telling stories, and I joined the BYU animation program when it wasn't even really the animation program yet.
Yeah. Now everybody knows it's well renowned for being a fantastic program. You served a mission in there, right? Somewhere.
I did. Yeah.
Did you go to BYU first or go to?
So I went to BYU for my freshman year in '96, and made a lot of good friends, a lot of good buddies that are still my friends today, and some of them we've even sucked into the world of animation. Then in '97, there was one of my sister's friends told me about this 3D animation Lightwave class. The software was called Lightwave, and it was in the HVAC. And I went and I said, can I sign up for this? This is a 400 level class. I'm a freshman. Am I even allowed? And I did, and they let me in. I thought, this is so cool. And it was an art elective, and my mind was blown. I was like, I was into this. This was amazing, right? And I made this robot, and he walked, and it was really hard to finish anything because I was just figuring out the software, but I was just in love with it, right? And then I went and served a mission. I thought, okay, I'm going to be an industrial designer or an engineer. I was on track for engineering. I'd even taken some engineering classes, and I'd taken some drawing classes, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I was going to need engineering, calculus, and drawing. And what happened was, I remember sitting in this tiny apartment in Norway on my mission, going through these newsprint catalogs of the classes and majors that you had to select, and you had to call into this system and sign up like 6 months before. So, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm a missionary. I'm like, don't even want to worry about that or can't figure that out. But I'm signing up for classes for BYU, and I found industrial design, and it was like, oh, you could do toy design or product design. Oh, that sounds interesting. I can use my drawing skills. Sure, I'll sign up for it. right? So I did, and then I went to school. Actually, no, I didn't. I signed up for engineering instead, but I remember that, and I went to school, started industrial design program, and that switched to industrial design from engineering because I found the animation program. And I was living in industrial design at the time, and they're like, we're going to call it digital design. We're going to make movies and cartoons. So I'm telling this story because it was barely even an animation program yet. It was just like, we're going to be an animation program. And Brent Adams was the professor, and he was really pushing this forward. And he said, we're going to be this, but right now this is where we can reside. And so he said, go sign up over there. You could be in this program. I said, don't need a portfolio review? Nah, we need just warm bodies. And so, now it's very competitive.
Yeah.
But we were able to win a student Emmy for our work on Lemmings, which was one of the first very successful movies to come out of BYU. And that landed me a job at Digital Domain. I went and worked on iRobot. They saw my work there with crowd creation of Lemmings, which is, there's autonomous crowd controls that you need to, when you have to animate 500 of them, you have to make them all have a crowd behavior. And so I'd worked on that and worked on some of the rendering, some fur items that were going on in there. And so in some of the animation, it was really fun. I showed that reel to Digital Domain because BYU had this in with Digital Domain, and some of the people had worked there, graduated from BYU, and they said, oh, this is really cool. They ended up hiring 5 or 6 students from that year to go work on iRobot and other things, and then I was off to the races making movies.
Tell me about that. When you got it, especially, back then, the computers have evolved so much. They're so much faster and do so much more. But what was your day-to-day? You get hired to go on, and if I'm watching the movie, what am I going to see that you did? And then tell me, you're on the computer, you're creating this stuff. It's probably pretty tedious, actually, frame by frame.
Sometimes it was. So if you go and watch iRobot, you can see almost nothing that I did, but almost everything.
Okay.
And the reason is because my first job was to be a pipeline technical director, which means that I was writing code that helped organize the assets and the animation. And so every single person in the studio would push the button on my little piece of software that I wrote, and it would process the things and send it down to the next stage. And I wrote a couple of those programs for different stages. And that was really critical because, I could say that, hey, you can't see anything on screen, but everything that was in the movie was processed through my code. And I was I was kind of proud of that, But then I got to do a couple little things. I got to do a couple little, particle effects, visual effects of robots' faces breaking, and a couple of character rig things here and there. So that was fun. But where's that funny thing? It was like, hey, well, what can I actually point to? What am I going to do? Show somebody my code?
Right.
And but there was one scene that was really complicated where they had about 1,000 robots standing all in a grid pattern, and the computers just couldn't render it at the time. And so I came up with some, systems to split that up and make that work and split it up into little chunks and do all sorts of things that I'd learned in school at BYU as we were reading some of the papers that came out in the industry of how people handle these kinds of things. But the next movie was much more exciting because I got to make bugs and cars and, King Kong's fur and, help with that and create some of the digital doubles, which are the digital versions of people. They're like digital stuntmen. And then I went on to, do all sorts of things in, Pirates of the Caribbean and Transformers. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What was the schedule like for that? I mean, typical movie schedules are you never stop working, right? Was that what it was like for you?
Yes. And sometimes, typically it was a 50-hour week, and we would just be working on things and, typically work Monday through Saturday once we were in crunch time. And we would, at times, need to work. You're sitting down at your computer, you have all the tasks you can get done for the day, and you're trying to work as fast as you can and be as efficient as possible. And, at times we would be working 70 or 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's really hard to fit 90 hours into a week of work because you're basically sleeping or working, and that's it. And you have to sleep because you're just going to run out of gas. And that happens. That happened on a couple films at Industrial Light and Magic where I worked. And, that can be part of the process. But it teaches you a really solid work ethic and a way to break down problems in your head and approach them in a way that like, hey, how can we get this done more efficiently and better before the deadline?
Yeah. A lot of times people talk about being good with numbers being the opposite of creativity, but this actually melds those two perfectly together because you need to know how to do.
Absolutely. And, I think that's kind of a new modern construct for that, because if you look at like a Renaissance man, Da Vinci or Michelangelo, they were architects, engineers, and artists. And it was all considered one and the same because you had to have those drawing skills to be able to express your ideas. And, scientists, a lot of them used to have to be very good draftsmen because there were no cameras. And so it's funny how we've compartmentalized that in our time. And I'm used to being around people who are very into both, like math, science, art, can sculpt the most amazing things, but then can, do a calculus problem at the same time. And we're merging all those worlds. I use those tools every day.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Well, I'm going to talk about some of the things coming out down in the future into what you're doing, but let's also talk about the publishing. So here we got this world of animation and cool stuff, but also you decided at some point to write some books, Ever Taster series, which is a cool, basically mostly for kids, right? Younger, about a young man who wants to find the most incredibly tasting food in the world. How did that come about?
Well, so, I started writing, figuring out how to write, teaching myself how to write a novel. And I wrote something and, never saw the light of day. It was kind of my practice. And then I went on and I figured, okay, I think I know how to do this. And I'm going to write something for a specific genre, which is middle grade, ages 8 to 12. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, a novel. You want to target, it's going to be about 300 pages. And I'm just going to write it. And, I thought, okay, what are all the things that have been done? And this was a chance for me to create something outlandish and crazy. I loved adventure stories in that genre, that age group. And, really this was, so I love adventure. I love going out there. I love exploring the world. I've taken trips to go see the mountain gorillas in Rwanda or, delved across the borders of the Congo. I've been to the Himalayas and Mount Everest, and all those things are just, it's almost like this desire to see the world and enjoy those adventures. And then when you get back, you go, oh, that was so cool. I'm going to put this into a story. I've seen these really fun things. I want to put it into a story. And so Ever Taster was a really good chance for me to tell an adventure story, but I wanted the funniest, most offbeat reason for anybody to go out and be propelled on this adventure, because stories are all about motivation. We want to see that somebody has a compelling reason to do something, because we never like stories if somebody just ends up going somewhere or doing something that doesn't have any type of motivation or character thought behind it. So I thought, okay, well, what if, we've just had, there's superpowers all over of, somebody who can fly, somebody who can see extra far, somebody who can hold their breath underwater. I don't want to do a superhero story, but there's all sorts of different fantasies. But what about what about taste? Has anybody really done taste? And, I thought, okay, so what if he's compelled by this, one of the most silliest concepts is to go find the most delicious thing in the world. So it's about this mom who's trying to find her kid, her 11-year-old boy, Guster, something to eat. We've all been at the dinner table where my son, Glendon, he won't eat beans. He just hates beans. Oh, I'm not eating beans, right? And it's become this thing for him. And a lot of kids are like that. With my kids, I'm trying to get them to eat something healthy or just eat anything at all. And I think, how are you even alive sometimes? Your plate is left full on the dinner table. You've only taken a few bites. And I think we've all struggled with that. How do we get, these picky kids to eat? And so it's a story of a kid and why he's so picky, what's happened to him, why is he special, why is he different? He's an Ever Taster, and they're born with this super sensitivity to taste and smell, and he can taste anything in the ice cream. He can taste where the cow was that gave the milk for the ice cream and what kind of grass they ate, right? He's super sensitive, but that ends up being a mechanism whereby he is the detective to help find and track down this most delicious thing in the world. And his brothers and sisters are on this adventure with their mom, and their dad's on a business trip, and it's kind of like a typical day at home with mom while dad's at work when things go awry. So they're just searching for the most delicious thing in the world. And I've had some amazing feedback. People really enjoyed the story. I've toured around to 12 states, visited over 400 elementary schools, signed in 50 times in Barnes and Noble and Costco, and have had such a great time of it. The book was an Amazon top 100 bestseller. It was number 51, and this was the print book. I remember that day it passed up John Grisham and Percy Jackson's middle grade level. It felt good. It was really cool. It was really fun, and it was exciting, especially because there was this whole feeling of like, well, you can't do this, right? This is too hard. I was like, well, no, I'm going to do it. And so we did it, and had quite a fun run of it. In fact, Deseret News, gave a good endorsement and got some good reviews and endorsements of it. And then Orson Scott Card, wrote Ender's Game and a number of things in for the LDS community too. He actually purchased the film rights, optioned the film rights for a period of time, and was working on developing it in film. And the way the options work is they expire after a certain amount of time. And so since then, so that was really cool, right? It's like this author that I love and respect, and I love his work. He said my work was great. I was like, whoa. As authors, you're looking, and as storytellers, you're looking for a little bit. You're wondering if anybody's ever going to like what you write. And suddenly there's this validation, like, hey, he likes it. And then, I'll hear somebody over here that says, oh, that was the worst book. The editing was terrible. The storytelling, I can't believe this quality. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Because I don't remember that person's name, but I remember Orson Scott Card.
That's right.
I remember my agent. I remember, actually Disney Publishing, which is called Hyperion, they almost purchased it. They were super excited about it. Last second marketing candidate, Random House almost made a purchase too. So that's kind of how it goes in publishing, right? Like, you're this close, and then the editor left the company, and so I ended up killed the deal, and so I went and self-published it. And I think that was really interesting because it started a path of entrepreneurship and creative business building of like, hey, if I've got these creative ideas and these stories I want to tell, I've got to figure out a vehicle by which to tell them. And so I started publishing. I started Feature House Publishing. I published the Evertaster series. People kept coming to me, how do you do this? How can you get your books into stores? How does that happen? I said, oh, I can help you. And so we got the contracts together, started working with other authors. It was really fun. We launched a lot of them to be, best-selling Amazon books. And it was really great. We've had some hits, we've had some misses.
Sure.
But now we have a whole backlist. We actually have distribution with Hachette, which is one of the big 5 publishers. They're actually one of the top 3.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool because that gives us access to all the retail and everything else that you're trying to build up as a publisher. And so that's exciting to be able to make those steps. It shows that it differentiates us from a small startup publisher and helps us to find ways to access all the channels that books are in. And so what's interesting now is that I've had interest for my books and some of the other books we've published turned into TV and film.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that because it was actually interesting. My agent called me one time and said, hey, this executive from DreamWorks wants to talk to you because he read an article in Publishers Weekly about your company and you're in animation and film. So it's really cool because the world of publishing and storytelling and the world of film are converging here in my life, and I love that, and that's exciting.
So like right up your alley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to you before. I want to ask you because you put in on your LinkedIn, it talks about augmented reality, virtual reality.
Right.
Let's talk about that for a minute because that's an exciting thing. And are you working on some projects on that? Because I've always wondered where's that going to go, and it's not clear. But you have a pretty good idea of.
Yeah. So it's amazing the things that we are going to be able to experience and that we can experience now through augmented reality and virtual reality. Virtual reality is when you put on the headset, of course, and you're looking around and you can see a game. And if you haven't tried it, try it at least once because you will feel like you're in a different world. When you're in a movie, you feel like you're watching a different world. When you're in a VR headset, you feel like you're there. And that is incredible because it's it's presence, right? Being present in a new place, you're essentially teleported, and it's incredible. And then the augmented reality is when you're looking through your glasses or your smartphone and you're seeing something in the real world that appears there that wasn't there before. So, as a monster creator, monster maker, that was my job in movies. So I love augmented reality because my job was always splicing the monster into real world. But if I can do that in augmented reality and you can interact from that monster, you can run from it, or you can see it, or if it's a puppy, right? There's so many cool things that you can do with interacting with new things that just make it fun. Historically, you can look at something and you could say, let's go to Old Nauvoo and let's look through our phones and see what it used to look like, and move your phone around and watch, here was where the old temple was, here was where these different shops were, and it's an overlay of the real world. We call it spatial computing. And I think that this is fun and it's advanced and it's exciting. And I think that really as members of the church and as people who are trying to tell good stories in the world, the more that we can adopt these technologies early on and the more that we can embrace them and create content for them, the more that we can have an influence on what those technologies are going to do. We can have an influence for good. We can tell stories that bring us to be better people, tell stories that unite us. And those technologies are so cutting edge and interesting. It's very exciting to be there.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what comes out of that. We got a couple minutes left, but I did bring up you've been part of the LDSPMA, Latter-day Saint, just changed the name, Publisher Media Art Society, something. I can't get it right, but it's close. How important is that to have organizations like that bring like Latter-day Saints together to help each other out to further these type of things like books and movies? And
it's very, very important. And I think that you see this happen in every industry. They have conventions, they have special things to bring people together because that's what fuels the industry, because you're meeting others and you're finding out what they're doing. And we really should foster these organizations and help them come together. But I want to give a caveat and a warning that when we're doing so, we need to make sure to help each other out and not just compete with each other. Because there's a way that, sometimes when you get together, you realize, oh, I'm not the only Latter-day Saint doing this type of thing.
Sure.
I'm not as special as I thought I was, and
Yeah, right.
and it ends up being just like a lot of other industries where, there's only a couple, there's going to be successes and there's going to be failures. Let's help each other out. And I think that that's one of the great things about that organization is that people can come together and they can find ways to help others, share knowledge, join in this common mission that we have to make the world a better place and to make ourselves a better place, to spread the message of the gospel, spread the message of being good people in overcoming the challenges that this world has. And I think that the more influence we have on art and media, the more good we can do.
Let's just got about a minute left, so this is a big question. The future for you, though, you see these projects, more publishing, visual stuff, films. What do you see? Where's it going for Future House Publishing?
Super exciting.
The future of Future House Publishing.
Oh, okay. The future of Future House and Future House Publishing and Future House Studios,
Yes,
where
right.
we do a lot of the AR and VR content and games. We're going to make games. We're going to make Metaverse applications. We're going to tie those into the stories that we're telling and that we're publishing. And we're going to be building some amazing tech that helps us experience things that are going to transform us and make us think of the world in the new ways. We're going to have paradigm-shifting experiences that we build. So when people walk away, they go, wow, that was more than just a game. I'm in awe of something that happened, and I'm going to think about things a little bit differently.
If people want to find out more, you've got several online presence, social media. So you can look up Adam Sidwell, look up Future House Publishing, Future House Studios, also Evertaster. I think it's evertaster.com.
Evertaster.com.
Yeah, check it out so you can check those. All those things out there available. I recommend people check it out. Really some cool stuff. I think the kids will enjoy the books as well. So Adam, thank you so much for taking some time to come and chat today.
You're very welcome. Good to be here.
Thanks, Adam.